Welcome back, everybody. Let's talk some pre-spawn bass fishing, y'all. We are at the HQ, and me and some of my Googan friends are going to talk about pre-spawn bass fishing and our favorite lures to attack those mondos out there. Wabam.
Did you call me your friend? That was nice.
I did, man.
That was nice. Really glad I have some
buddy.
friends in this life.
It's only because the camera's on though, so don't make yourself feel too good.
Would you say this? Springtime is also the favorite time to go fishing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And if you can get out there in those first few weeks when it's cold and bust one of those fat bellies,
Yeah.
it makes it worth it. So, take it away, Perry.
Well, we picked out, show a couple of these. We're going to talk about this more in the podcast room, but these are my favorite spring baits. Here we go.
Gee. No, maybe he wants to scout.
Oh, he does want to scout.
Turned on it.
Gave it a look.
He's suspended, Scout will do that to you. Yeah, he would actually crush a lure.
It's my best bass face. Downward
Open up
turn.
that tank.
Trebles off that guy.
Oh, here comes the little guy.
Listen to the sound underwater. It's crazy.
Wait, hang on.
Oh, little guy's sparky. Oh. That actually looks pretty legit, man.
Oh, fine.
Oh, he's tweaked. You ruined it.
Yeah, dude, you only get one chance at a mondo like that.
That's Perry's logic. If it hides under a rock, just keep throwing a trap in its face.
Now, if that was a little drag drop or something, just
I mean,
sneak
can I hook
escape.
him? I'm just gonna go full in for it.
He's not gonna do it now.
Oh no, you don't want it. Wow.
He's superior.
He knows.
Bluegills.
This is what he sees. Perry, this is what he sees. Eat it. Eat it. He's like, why would I do that?
I just gained some respect for that bass.
Yeah,
you
me
got
too.
smart.
Didn't fall for you. Oh, you're bull.
Still my favorite bait for the spring.
Yeah, it seemed like it worked real well.
Alright, y'all, I grabbed a couple of my favorite pre-spawn baits as well. The time of the year where I'm kind of switching it up from things like the drop shot and the Ned rig, right? These fish are getting on the move. I got a couple of my top picks right here. Let's talk about it.
I got a few baits right here, completely different than what Perry usually throws because normally he doesn't catch that many fish, unless he's on my boat. Then he catches some pretty big ones. But I got two of my favorites right here. We got one that's a moving bait and one that's a bottom bait. Springtime, like these boys said, is my favorite time to catch fish. It is when you catch big bass, period, hands down. So I'm excited. Let's take this to the podcast room and talk about our favorite spring lures. All right, here we go. We all got our lures. We all got our baits. We're going to dive right into this, head first into spring fish. I know it's January, but whenever this goes up, it'll probably be January. Maybe it'll be March. Depends.
Right about the time.
But this is when you need to be getting ready for this kind of stuff. So we'll start with AP Bassin. Let's talk about, I see you have a lot over there. What are you working with in the spring?
I have a lot of the same baits.
Yeah, I
of the
noticed
same
that.
baits.
I noticed that.
All right, so we're gonna go into my favorite spring bait, which is a lipless bait, or more specifically, the clutch. That's what we make here. We have two sizes of the clutch.
Three.
We have, I have two sizes here, but we make three.
Oh.
I have two sizes of the clutch with me. We make three sizes, and this is perfect to use any sort of time in the spring when the fish are active, eating on shad, or even when they're eating on craws. One of my favorite colors is the red craw, as Rackley mentioned to me. They love red in the spring. They love shads. They love golds. Yeah, that would be my favorite bait.
All right, I think it's a good choice, and I think it's also relative to like where you are in the country. That's going to depend, like in the specific water. A lot of these like that you guys have are my favorites too. It's just we're trying to give you guys a little variety, pick out some homegrown favorite classics. So mine, if I got to go anywhere in the country, a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, specifically chartreuse and white, with that Colorado willow tandem. I've caught so many big ones in the pre-spawn on that, just going slow. The deal is you got to go slow, but there's something about that blade thump that just seems to catch big fish. Still, spinnerbait's been around for I don't know how many years, but
Pretty ancient lure.
yeah, it seems ancient,
Yeah.
but our zinger 1/2 ounce with that Colorado willow tandem, just love it. And I don't like to go chunky trailers. I just throw something on. I've actually been using the drag and drop quite a bit as a trailer, just something nice that's not going to let that bait roll over. a really nice little subtle action on the back of it. So it's one of my favorites. Fishing around grass, stumps, all the tasty stuff. It's a great bait. Very similar tactic. I like to go with the 4.8-inch saucy.
How are you rigging that?
So I like to, my favorite way, honestly, we don't make this product yet, but is a small willow blade underspin. Well, people call it underspin, but I guess, you know, like a owner makes a flashy swimmer.
Yeah.
I'll say, like, that's my favorite one right now, to pair with this and a 1/4 ounce. Rig it up, Texpose it on the top, and fish it the same way you would the spinnerbait, just around grass lines, stumps, docks. This is when they're kind of moving up there in that, you know, I want to say less than 10 foot, maybe 12 foot of the water column. And similar thing, just usually in clearer water, I'll go with this over the spinnerbait. This is more stained. And then let's not forget, boys and girls, 5-inch lunker log. You know, wacky or rigged just Westins, Texas.
Year round. Too.
My
Coast to
gosh,
West
it is a year-round fish catcher, but just going really slow with this. I mean, you can throw a little you know, split shot in front of it, do a little micro Carolina rig sort of thing. There's so many ways you can rig this, catch fish in the spring. This is one of those where you break out your Marlboros, and then you know, you got to go slow to catch them a lot of times in the spring. But I joke, folks. I joke, but that's literally how slow you need to fish it sometimes. But
there's
ultimate
this guy that actually his name's Frank. He was like a president of our like junior bass fishing club. And when we were kids, he'd teach us how to fish a senko, and he'd say, "This is how you fish a senko." We'd be in like 10 feet of water. He'd throw a senko out there, put his rod down, grab his coffee, and just start drinking his coffee. He just kind of like look around, just drink his coffee.
He's not wrong.
Then he'd pick up his rod, and then sometimes he'd have a fish. Like it would just kind of like be there, like it was catfishing.
I was gonna say you going for catfish, bud, but he's
That's literally what it was. It was catfishing, but with a senko. Slower. I mean, the biggest fish I caught last year was on that exact.
this
bait.
color too. Do you love this color?
Yes.
The green pumpkin blue.
Yes,
It's one of
same
my
exact
favorite
color.
colors.
And no, sorry, it was cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
But I was throwing
Oh,
that
yeah,
color
big
that
cinnamon.
day. But I would just literally threw it in front of the fish's face and let it sit, and he just ate it.
The thing about the
the lure
lunker
just
log
does the
too
work.
is you don't have to like set the hook right away. They'll keep it in their mouths for a long time.
Oh, forever, yeah.
Like,
You
they'll-
can mess up.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way.
They'll mess up. They won't spit it out like they will a jig or, you know, a hard bait sometimes. They'll eat that.
It's literally it's soft and
They'll
it's
eat it.
yeah.
It's a nice, tasty hot dog.
They'll give it the good suckage for sure. Just
I'm glad you
Yeah.
brought that to the table. I can't believe I didn't even.
I didn't
yeah,
think
it
it's
too.
it's one of those we all forget about because it's just always in the arsenal somewhere.
Mhm.
But you know, it is really good in the early spring as well. So
well, awesome. I like all y'all's so far. Can't even speak.
you got another one I forgot about.
Yeah. Well, I got technically 3 lures here, but 2 presentations. This is tough because I think it really depends on not only location, but like what Peric was saying earlier, like water temperature. Like in the springtime, I like just figuring out where the warmest water is and where the water is rising. And I like to fish on days where it's not super cold in the spring. Like usually that kind of shuts them off. Usually, but I like throwing jigs in the springtime. This one in particular is a 3/8 ounce thick jig, and that I believe this is rotten pumpkin. Yeah, this is rotten pumpkin. It's a heavier jig. It's got a heavy hook on it. It's a 5/0 hook, so it's a bigger hook. And with that, I like throwing I think literally this is everyone's favorite. It's the Bandito bug, and specifically in blue baby color. I don't know what it is, but this color just I have a ton of confidence in, and I think the fish love it too. And I think I probably went through a metric ton of these this spring.
As many as we could get.
The amount of empties that were on my boat was just like, it was like I couldn't stop fishing them. And what I'll do is I just combine these both. And on any sort of warm sunny day, like the shallower the better, I've seen fish not necessarily maybe like actually spawn, but think about spawning or wanting to spawn, even the water temps like in like the mid to low 50s. Like it doesn't make any sense. As a kid you were taught like, oh, 60 degrees they can spawn. This year, like I went back into like a few creeks and there was like fish spawning and it's still cold out. So super shallow, as shallow as you can get sometimes, a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, something like that. But if you're still fishing for those fish that, you know, because they'll come up in waves, you'll have fish that are spawning first, and then you have some that aren't even think about spawning or still winter mode. So for those fish that are starting to move up, we haven't made it up to the creeks or like the shallow banks. I like throwing the full size scout. I caught one of my other biggest fish last year on this very bait in this very color. And then it was about a month ago, winter fishing too. Caught 2 very nice fish on this. So this is a really good early spring. Like if you can't find them shallow, just find any sort of deep docks.
Close to deep water.
Deep water, like 10-foot minimum. You know, it's like 8-foot minimum, especially with light line. This bait will dive a lot deeper than you'd think. It's got a 4 to 6 dive rate, but I think it gets a little bit deeper than that, like especially on 10.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 favorites. And I catch giant fish.
I still have nightmares of bites I've gotten on
Yeah.
jigs, on stumps, and fork and other stumpy lakes back in the day in the early spring. I love it. And I would say the Bandito bug paired with this in the early spring is better than a craw. I think we talked about that the other day. It's more subtle than the big movement of the craw, which in the winter and early spring, it's more natural.
Yeah,
so
I don't know why I gravitate. I think because, like you guys said, it's more subtle. But I never really throw the craw until like it gets warm.
Yeah,
Like when I'm making quick pitches, like I'm fishing like this slow. Like I'm taking my time on a lay down. So.
To add
Good
also to your metric ton analogy, where you were like, I go through a lot of those.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that complain about the Bandito bug in specific, that it like
So soft.
you have to use them and so soft.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes the bait so good.
Yeah.
especially when the water's cold.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes the bait harder anytime it's in colder water. So yeah,
I would
having
rather
that super
lose
subtle.
a bunch of baits and catch a bunch of fish and have the true action the bait is intended to have, opposed to have something that's as stiff as a board.
Yeah.
And that lasts like 5 fish, but then you
get less bites.
You sacrifice action.
Yeah.
It's just how it sucks, durability to action ratio. We're a little bit more on the action
Yes.
side.
I agree.
Just as what it is.
Got to be a balance.
What about you, Weston?
I have got a couple of my favorites right here, staples for the pre-spawn, y'all. We're talking about a bladed jig and a shallow diving crankbait. You guys might know this is actually going to be my first season pre-spawn fishing off a boat, so bigger water, lakes, things of that nature. But I'm typically hitting the pond, so for a lot of you pond guys, this stuff is going to be fantastic. Covering water, hitting the shallows as these fish are moving up, and you're kind of transitioning from maybe some of those drop shot style baits, the slow moving stuff. These fish are getting more active. What I'm going to be doing is casting these things along the bank at a 45, and some of the reasons I choose these 2 baits, and they're semi-interchangeable. One's good for the grass, docks. One's good for rock. You're just kind of varying it up based on what is in your ponds and lakes. You can really fish either of these as well in clear or stained water. Got a little bit of a rattle with this guy right here, the banger, and a shad color has always done me right. And then as well as the clickbait, you got this blade to draw these fish in from a far distance, whether it's clear, and I'd choose something like a bluegill color, or maybe we hit those stained waters going with something like black and blue. I've caught some of my biggest fish in the pre-spawn though on these baits right here. And I like to choose something like a ½ ounce so I can work this thing a little bit quicker as the water's warming up. And maybe I do need to get out a little bit further, a little bit deeper. I've got the opportunity to go a little bit lower in the water column if I'm not finding them up quite as shallow. But you'll find yourself getting on some numbers with these 2 baits right here, something like a shallow diving crank as well as a bladed jig. And what I might do with this guy right here, the clickbait, is even toss on one of these saucy swimmers. I'd go with the smaller size now, but you match it up right to your skirt. You want to get that skirt and your trailer matching. I'd probably grab something like that 3.3-inch saucy swimmer. Start covering some water, start getting some big bass on the hook this springtime, you guys. So be on the lookout for some big catches from us.
Good
yeah,
info.
Killer
Good info.
suggestions.
I'm
Yeah, that
also-
was great, bro.
that's good.
I'm also
Smaller
excited
info.
to fish the clickbait. This will be,
Our
I think, all of
first
it. It'll be
season, yeah.
our first spring throwing the actual clickbait.
The final.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
a
we
good
started
time.
playing with it last summer. It was like summerish where we started getting.
It's kind of when I don't really
playing
throw
around.
bladed jigs too much.
I
Yeah.
feel like we had some like early prototypes last spring.
Well, I
that
think
were just
some of y'all did.
were really
Early.
bad.
Yeah,
really
early.
bad.
Yeah.
But now it's so much better.
Now we're dialed.
Now she's ripping and ready for some ripe largemouth.
All right, guys. Well, that was our favorite baits to use this spring. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed today's episode of the Googan Squad. Thanks for all you guys for joining me on my
Absolutely,
podcast.
man. Hey, thanks for having us.
Happy to have.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, man.
No problem.
Just ring me up.
We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Peace.